Tonight, Mandy Noel joins us live from Corpus Christi. That is where human remains were found yesterday near the place where Caleb Harris, a college student from New Braunfels, was reported missing back in March. Mandy, we understand you've spoken with Corpus Christi police. What are they telling you tonight?
Well, the first thing we want to make very clear is that these are unidentified remains. We don't know that these remains are or are not those of Caleb Harris, but you mentioned these remains were found very close to where he lived last year at Texas A&M Corpus Christi. You can see his apartment complex through that field behind me. But this is where those remains were found. And I also want to point out, just a little stone's throw away from where I'm standing is stormwater runoff. That area was also extensively searched in the days and weeks following his disappearance. Now, the Corpus Christi police chief says we're not going to know the identity of these remains for at least 4 weeks, probably at least 4 to 6 weeks, but we have been following this case. So as soon as the word came in that remains had been found here, we knew we needed to get up here and start looking into it. So that's what we did. The remains came in through the sewer lines, and this location right behind me, like I said, it's across the street from Caleb Harris's apartment last year. City workers found the remains around 3 p.m. yesterday. This area has been searched over many times, even by Caleb's family. Corpus Christi Police Assistant Chief Todd Green told me earlier on the phone that it would be virtually impossible for someone to get into this lift station. That means a body ended up in the wastewater system, the sewers, and made its way here. He has told me also the body was in an advanced state of decomposition and did not show any signs of any type of animal activity. There is a lot of speculation online and people want answers, but CCPD Chief Mike Markle says we're going to have to wait.
I understand there's been, there's families waiting, there's, hurt, loved ones and those, and a lot of community that are anticipating quick results. But we need to take our time and make sure we do this right and the investigation is handled properly. And then we have to wait for some answers.
The chief says we get it. We know everybody wants to know who is this person? Who does these remains belong to? Was it foul play? That people want to know what happened. In fact, the first thing that Corpus Christi police did, one of the first things when these remains were found, were to call Caleb Harris's parents because they didn't want his parents to find out about remains being pulled so close to where his apartment was on social media. And I also talked with Randy Harris, Caleb's father, on the phone earlier today. I'll share a little bit of our conversation coming up. For now, for News 4 San Antonio, I'm live in Corpus Christi, Mandy Noel.
All right, Mandy, thank you for that. We'll see you a bit later in the show. We do want to go back out live to Mandy Noel, who is in Corpus Christi tonight. She's learning more about the latest developments in the search for missing New Braunfels student Caleb Harris. Mandy?
Yeah, remains found right behind me at this site. Sewers lead to this, and it's just a field away from where Caleb Harris, missing New Braunfels student, disappeared from and was last seen on March 4th. Coming up, we'll hear more from police about when we can expect an identification on these remains, whether it could be Caleb, and we'll also hear from Caleb's family. I talked with his father on the phone earlier. That's coming up.
We continue our coverage on tonight's top story as investigators in Corpus Christi work to identify the human remains that were found near the place where Caleb Harris went missing back in March. Mandy Noel has returned several times to talk with police and family. Mandy, what can you tell us tonight?
We do not know who these remains belong to. We do not know if they belong to Caleb Harris or somebody else, and we aren't going to know for a while. Corpus Christi's police chief says it's probably going to be 4 to 6 weeks before we have any type of identification on the remains that were pulled from this facility behind me. But what I can tell you is through this field, that's where Caleb's apartment was last year at Texas A&M Corpus Christi. Now, I spoke with Randy Harris earlier today. That's Caleb's father. Throughout this whole traumatic process, his family has been so resilient in saying, we are continuing to pray, we want Caleb home. And that's still what they want. He says, we are praying, we are hoping that it wasn't Caleb that was pulled out of here yesterday by city workers. But that's something that we are going to have to wait on. As I said, it's going to take 4 to 6 weeks. But right now, this is an unidentified situation. The family says they're praying for whoever this person is in their family. Randy Harris says The right people are working on the case. So here's what we know. Sewer lines lead into this pump station that's behind me, and police say the body did not start here. That would be virtually impossible. Somehow a body was in the wastewater system, the sewers, and ended up here. Whether that was an accident or foul play, police have no way of knowing yet. The body was in advanced decomposition where workers found it. Corpus Christi police say an autopsy was scheduled for today, but we will likely not get preliminary cause of death for at least a few days. As far as identifying those remains, again, it could take 4 to 6 weeks. Police say they know there's a lot of interest in this case. People have been all over social media speculating, coming up with their own ideas, but police say you're just going to have to be patient. We'll get you the answers as soon as we can. And that's what we're going to stay on top of, and we'll stay out here in Corpus Christi following the details for you. For now, I'm live in Corpus. For News 4 San Antonio, Mandy Noel.
Mandy Noel is on assignment tonight down in Corpus Christi as a family in New Braunfels is waiting for answers after a body was recently discovered there. College student Caleb Harris disappeared back in March while attending school in Corpus Christi. So far, authorities have not identified the body that was found. But for more on what investigators are saying, we want to turn right now live to Mandy, who is in Corpus. Mandy?
You are exactly right, and that's such a good way of putting it. These remains are unidentified, but a family is waiting for answers, and they have been since March 4th. However, the Corpus Christi police chief says it's going to be 4 to 6 weeks before we have any answers. That's how long he expects it to take before these remains are identified. So we cannot say whether they are or are not Caleb Harris. What we do want to point out, this is where the remains were pulled from. City workers pulled the remains from this facility yesterday around 3 o'clock. Across this field, you can see an apartment complex. That's where we've joined you from before. That's Caleb Harris's apartment complex. That's where he lived in the last school year as he attended Texas A&M Corpus Christi, and it was from right outside of there that he disappeared on March 4th. We have brought you this story through the last couple months. We've talked with police here in Corpus Christi, and we've talked many times with Caleb Harris's family, and all they want is their loved one back. I spoke with Randy Harris, Caleb's father, earlier. He says they are hoping and praying it was not Caleb that was pulled from here yesterday. They want Caleb home safe, and they want him home alive. They are praying for whoever it was and that person's family. Now, this entire area so close to Caleb's apartment has been extensively searched many times over. Corpus Christi Police Assistant Chief Todd Green told me earlier on the phone that for someone to get into this, now this is a lift station, it means the body ended up in the wastewater system, the sewers, and somehow made its way here. There was a lot of rain here last week. Things could have been moved around. He also told me the body was in an advanced state of decomposition. There's a lot of speculation online and people want answers, but CCPD Chief Mike Markle says we're all going to have to be patient and wait.
Ask for a little patience. Just let us do the investigation that we know how to do, and let us continue our methodical approach. We want to make sure we do it right, and there's no shortfalls at the end of this.
So what's next? An autopsy. We'll break down how long that could take and when we might get a preliminary cause of death coming up. For now, I'm live in Corpus Christi. Mandy Noel for News 4 San Antonio.
Well, now back to our top story tonight. Mandy Noel joining us live from Corpus Christi. This after a body was discovered there. We are still waiting for the person to be identified and to see if there's any connection to the disappearance of college student Caleb Harris, who is from New Braunfels. Mandy, good evening.
Good evening. There's so many questions, and it's going to take us some time to get some answers. On March 4th, Caleb Harris walked out of his apartment early morning hours. It was around 3 a.m., sent a picture walking on a foggy night, and was seen for the last time at that point. Since then, an extensive search has covered Corpus Christi. It's gone to San Antonio too, where he's from, New Braunfels. That's where his family is from. I spoke with them earlier after all of this happened just within the last day. So here's what we know has gone on in the last day. Behind where I'm standing, a body was recovered. Human remains were found by city workers around 3 o'clock yesterday. Those remains are not identified. unidentified. We do not know who they belong to, and we won't for probably 4 to 6 weeks, according to the Corpus Christi police chief. I talked with Randy Harris earlier today, Caleb's father. He says his family is standing on hopes and prayers that it was not Caleb pulled from this facility. They are praying for whoever it is and their family. He says the right people are working on this case. Now, where I am, sewer lines lead to this pump station. Police tell me the body did not start here. It would be virtually impossible. So somehow a body was in the wastewater system, the sewers, and ended up here. There was a lot of rain in the last week, could have moved things around. It ended up here and was found yesterday. Whether it was an accident or foul play, police have no way of knowing yet. The body was in advanced decomposition when workers found it. Corpus Christi police say an autopsy was scheduled for today, but we will not likely get a preliminary cause of death for at least a few days. And Corpus Christi Police Chief Mike Markle says as far as it comes to identifying those remains, it's going to be at least 4 to 6 weeks before we know anything. The medical examiner has to go. There's forensics. There's a lot of investigating, and none of it can be rushed. So while a lot of people want to know, is it possible that this was Caleb Harris, there is simply no way of saying yes or no or any point to speculating, because there's a lot of investigating that has to go into it. That's where police are at right now, and that's the best thing that anyone can do for the families involved as well. For now, we are live in Corpus Christi. For News 4 San Antonio, I'm Mandy Noel.